The narrow lane wound quietly through the sleepy village, its edges softened by wildflowers and the gentle hum of an early spring breeze. At the very end, half hidden behind a tangle of ivy and ancient oaks, stood a small, weathered cottage. Its once vibrant paint was now chipped and faded, the wooden door bowed slightly from years of neglect. This forgotten home seemed to hold its breath beneath layers of dust and peeling shutters, waiting for someone to breathe life into its silent rooms once more. Emma Collins paused on the threshold, her hand trembling as she reached out to touch the rough surface of the door. She was 3 months pregnant, her belly still a secret curve beneath her loose sweater. But the weight she carried felt heavier than the child growing inside her. Her mind was a tempest of anxiety and uncertainty. Each step toward this derelict cottage a tentative promise to herself that perhaps here she might find a new beginning. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and old wood, mingling with the scent of blooming lilacs from the overgrown garden. Emma's gaze lingered on the intricate carvings etched into the doorframe. Delicate floral patterns, twisted vines, and hidden symbols that seemed almost alive beneath the peeling paint. She traced a finger over the grooves, curiosity flickering through her exhaustion. Whoever had crafted these had poured care into their work, a secret story locked away in each curve. 3 weeks earlier, Emma had sat alone in their cramped city apartment, the fluorescent glow of her phone screen illuminating her tear-streaked face. The test had been clear, positive. The news, which should have filled her with joy, instead sent ripples of doubt crashing through her. James, her partner of 2 years, had been distant ever since the moment she told him. Messages once filled with warmth became cold and clipped, promises dissolved into silence. When she confronted him, the truth spilled out. He wasn't ready, and he wasn't sure he wanted to be a father. The man she thought she knew was slipping away, leaving her stranded on the edge of a new life she hadn't chosen alone. The eviction notice had come like a final blow. James had moved out days before, leaving Emma with nothing but a suitcase and a heart full of questions. The city, once a place of opportunity and possibility, now felt suffocating, a maze of memories and broken dreams. When she stumbled across the listing for the cottage in an online forum, something about it called to her. It was far from the city's relentless pace, nestled in a village where time seemed to slow. For a moment, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could start over. Emma pushed open the door with a creak that echoed through the silent house. The interior was cloaked in shadows, dust motes dancing like tiny specters in the shafts of light filtering through cracked windows. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of forgotten years, but beneath that lay the faint aroma of wood smoke and lavender, remnants of a life once lived here. The narrow hallway led to a small parlor where faded floral wallpaper curled at the edges and a moth-eaten rug lay crumpled on the floor. A fireplace, cold and empty, bore the ashes of countless winters. Emma ran her hand along the mantel, feeling the rough grain of the wood beneath her fingertips. Despite the neglect, a quiet dignity lingered in the room, as if the walls themselves remembered laughter and warmth. Her footsteps stirred the silence as she moved through the cottage, each creak of the floorboards a reminder of its age. The kitchen was a cramped space, the counters stained and cracked, but the window above the sink framed a view of the wild garden outside, where daffodils nodded bravely against the breeze. Emma imagined herself standing there in years to come, a child playing among the blooms, the cottage a sanctuary from the world's chaos. Yet beneath her hope, a current of fear persisted. The carvings on the door whispered of secrets, and the stories she'd heard from Mrs. Langley, the elderly neighbor, weighed on her mind. The woman had spoken of Margaret, the cottage's original owner, a woman who had vanished decades ago under mysterious circumstances. Some in the village still wondered if the house was cursed, a place where sorrow lingered like a shadow. Emma's heart ached with the parallels. Like Margaret, she was a woman alone, facing the daunting prospect of motherhood without certainty or support. The past and present seemed to converge in this neglected space, binding her to a lineage of resilience and quiet strength. As she settled onto a creaky wooden chair by the window, Emma pressed a hand to her belly, feeling the faint flutter of life inside her. The uncertainty that had plagued her since the pregnancy announcement now mingled with a fragile hope. This cottage, with all its cracks and faded beauty, might become more than just a refuge. It could be the place where she found herself again, where the threads of her fractured life began to weave into something whole. Outside, the village carried on with its gentle rhythms. Birds flitted between branches, and the distant sound of children's laughter drifted through the air. Emma closed her eyes, letting the quiet wash over her, imagining the cottage filled once more with light and love. Her phone buzzed quietly in her pocket, a reminder of the world beyond these walls. She hesitated before answering, the screen revealing a message from an unknown number. "Are you sure you want to be alone in that house?" The words sent a shiver down her spine, but also steeled her resolve. This was her choice, her path. Emma exhaled slowly and rose, determination settling in her bones. She would make this place her sanctuary, not just a shelter, but a home. The carvings on the door might hold their mysteries, but she was ready to uncover them, to face whatever shadows lurked in the corners. As twilight deepened outside, the cottage seemed to exhale with her, the heavy silence lifting just slightly. Emma's journey was only beginning, and though the road ahead was uncertain, she no longer walked it alone. This forgotten cottage, with its secrets and scars, was now hers to heal. And in that healing, she would find the strength to embrace the new life growing within. The morning sun filtered through the thin curtains of the cottage's small bedroom, casting soft patterns on the worn wooden floor. Emma lay awake, the weight of the past weeks pressing down on her chest as heavily as the pillow beneath her head. Outside, the village stirred to life. Distant church bells ringing, a dog barking somewhere down the lane. But inside her mind, the noise was quieter, filled instead with a steady thrum of uncertainty. Packing the last of her belongings into a battered suitcase the day before had been an act of both desperation and hope. Leaving the city behind had felt like stepping off a cliff blindfolded, but staying there was no longer an option. The cramped apartment, once a symbol of shared dreams, had become a mausoleum of broken promises. James's absence was a hollow ache she carried everywhere, sharp and sudden like a winter wind. Her phone sat on the bedside table, its screen glowing intermittently with messages she dared not check. She had deleted most of James's texts the night before, unable to bear the sting of his silence or the coldness of his words. The few she'd kept were a cruel reminder of how quickly love could unravel, a slow unspooling of hope into nothingness. One message from him lingered in her mind. "I'm sorry, Emma. I can't do this." Those words echoed endlessly, a refrain she couldn't escape. Still, the village held a fragile promise. Emma had accepted the offer of temporary refuge in the cottage, its isolation both a comfort and a challenge. The silence was unfamiliar, sometimes suffocating, but it was also a chance to breathe, to gather the scattered pieces of herself. The thought of motherhood, once thrilling, now felt like standing at the edge of a vast, dark sea with no map and no compass. Later that morning, as Emma stepped outside into the crisp air, the village seemed to watch her cautiously. Narrow cobblestone streets wound between stone cottages, their chimneys sending thin trails of smoke into the sky. Neighbors tended to gardens, exchanged quiet greetings, their eyes lingering on the new arrival with a mixture of curiosity and reserve. From across the lane, an elderly woman approached, her steps slow but steady. Mrs. Langley, the caretaker of the village's history, and the cottage itself, wore a shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her eyes, sharp and discerning, softened as they rested on Emma. "You must be Miss Collins," she said, her voice a gentle rasp. "I've been expecting you." Emma nodded, offering a tentative smile. "Yes, I'm Emma. Thank you for welcoming me." Mrs. Langley's gaze drifted toward the cottage. It's seen better days, but it has a soul. Not many would dare to take it on these days. Emma glanced back at the house, the faded carvings on the doorframes seeming to pulse faintly in the morning light. "I need a fresh start," she admitted quietly. "Somewhere to figure things out." The older woman nodded knowingly. "This place has a way of making you face your truths. It's not for the faint-hearted." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken stories settling between them. Mrs. Langley then reached into her worn leather bag and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. "Margaret's diary," she said softly, referring to the woman who had lived in the cottage decades ago. "She was much like you, alone, facing a future filled with questions. The village hasn't forgotten her, even if the years have tried to bury her memory." Emma's fingers brushed the worn cover. "I'd like to read it," she said, a flicker of determination sparking inside her. Mrs. Langley smiled faintly. "Be careful. The past has a way of creeping into the present." As the day unfolded, Emma found herself torn between hope and despair. She wandered the village, the distance from the city both a balm and a burden. At times, she felt the sting of isolation keenly, the absence of friends and family a hollow ache. The thought of raising a child alone in this quiet place brought tears she refused to shed in public. Back at the cottage, the silence grew heavier as dusk approached. Emma sat by the fireplace, the last embers of the day's light flickering across the cracked walls. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from an unknown number. "The house holds more than memories. Be wary." She stared at the screen, a chill creeping up her spine. Was it a prank? A warning? Her heart pounded with a mix of fear and curiosity. That night, sleep eluded her. The cottage's creaks and groans seemed louder in the darkness, shadows shifting just beyond the edges of the dim lamp. She pressed her hand to her belly, seeking comfort in the life growing within her, the fragile thread connecting her to the future. In the days that followed, Emma grappled with her conflicting emotions. The betrayal she'd endured in the city felt raw and open, yet here, in this village, she sensed an undercurrent of something more, a history tangled with loss and resilience. Mrs. Langley's stories of Margaret's courage and the cottage's secrets haunted her thoughts, a haunting melody beneath her solitude. One afternoon, as Emma walked to the small village shop, she noticed the cautious glances of the locals. Whispers followed her footsteps, questions about the woman who had come to claim the old cottage. The village was a tight-knit tapestry of stories and memories, and newcomers were threads woven slowly and carefully. At the shop, Emma met Tom, a young man with kind eyes and a weather-beaten face, who introduced himself as a local historian. He spoke with reverence about the village's past and the cottage's role in it, weaving tales of Margaret's bravery and the community's struggles during wartime. His presence was a balm, a reminder that she was not entirely alone. Yet, despite these small rays of connection, the shadow of loneliness lingered. Emma grappled with nights filled with restless dreams, visions of the cottage's hidden corners, whispers of voices long gone, and the relentless pulse of fear beneath her hope. Throughout it all, the weight of impending motherhood pressed on her, an unspoken promise and a daunting responsibility. She wrestled with fears of abandonment, the specter of repeating past mistakes, and the question of whether she could protect this new life from the fractures of her own. But amid the fear, a quiet strength began to grow. Emma found solace in small rituals, lighting a candle each evening, tending the wild garden, tracing the carvings on the door with renewed curiosity. The cottage, once a symbol of decay, started to feel less like a prison and more like a refuge. One evening, as she sat by the window watching the stars emerge, Emma received a knock at the door. Mrs. Langley stood there, her eyes filled with concern, but also a flicker of hope. "You're not as alone as you think, Emma," she said softly. "This village, this cottage, we all have our stories. And sometimes sharing them is the first step to healing." Emma nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and fears. But in the quiet strength of this village, and within herself, a fragile seed of hope was beginning to take root. As the night deepened, the cottage held its breath once more. Outside, the village settled into a cautious peace, the past and present entwined in a delicate dance. And inside, Emma prepared to face whatever shadows awaited, determined to find light in the darkness, for herself and for the life she was about to bring into the world. The morning light poured through the cottage's windows in gentle streams, illuminating layers of dust that danced like tiny specters in the air. Emma stood in the middle of the small parlor, her fingers tracing the edges of a faded armchair, the fabric worn thin and threadbare from years of neglect. The walls, once adorned with floral wallpaper, now peeled back in curling strips, revealing plaster mottled with time. Yet, amid the decay, the room held a strange kind of charm, a whisper of faded grandeur that beckoned her to uncover its stories. She moved slowly, taking in the cottage's interior with a mixture of reverence and curiosity. The floorboards creaked beneath her feet, each step stirring the silence that had settled like a shroud. A moth-eaten rug lay crumpled near the fireplace, its patterns barely discernible, but Emma imagined it once vibrant, a centerpiece for gatherings long forgotten. Her exploration led her to the kitchen, where the counters bore stains of countless meals prepared and shared, now layered with dust and cobwebs. The sink, chipped and stained, framed a window that looked out onto the wild garden where daffodils nodded bravely in the breeze. Emma could almost hear the faint echoes of laughter and conversation, as if the house itself remembered the lives it had sheltered. Beneath the creaking floor near the hearth, Emma's fingers brushed against something unusual, a slight unevenness in the wood. Kneeling, she pried at a loose floorboard, heart pounding with anticipation. Beneath it lay a small wooden chest, its surface scarred but sturdy, bound with rusted iron clasps. The chest felt heavy with secrets, its weight both literal and symbolic. Emma's breath caught as she lifted the lid, revealing a collection of aged letters, sepia-toned photographs, and a small, leather-bound diary. The papers were brittle, the ink faded, but the care with which they had been preserved was evident. She carefully unfolded a letter, the handwriting elegant yet hurried, the words revealing a glimpse into a past life. As she read, Emma was transported decades back to a time when the cottage was alive with hope and hardship. The letters spoke of Margaret, the woman who had once called this place home, a single mother navigating the turbulent years of wartime. Her words were raw and honest, chronicling the struggles of raising a child alone, the societal judgment she faced, and the fierce determination that drove her forward. One photograph caught Emma's eye, a faded image of Margaret cradling a baby, her eyes filled with both love and sorrow. The resemblance was uncanny, as if the woman in the picture were reaching out across time, sharing a silent bond. Emma felt a surge of connection, a thread weaving through generations, binding their stories together. The diary offered deeper insight into Margaret's world. Its pages were filled with daily reflections, hopes, and fears. Emma read about the quiet moments of joy, a child's first steps, the warmth of a fire on a cold night, as well as the shadows of loneliness and uncertainty. Margaret's resilience shone through every word, a testament to the strength that had carried her through. As the hours slipped by, Emma's isolation began to dissipate, replaced by a profound sense of kinship. The cottage was no longer just a shelter. It was a vessel of stories, a sanctuary where past and present converged. The discovery of Margaret's chest and its contents breathed new life into the fading walls, inviting Emma to become part of a continuing narrative. Yet, amid the comfort, a sense of mystery deepened. Mrs. Langley's warnings echoed in her mind, the suggestion that the cottage held secrets beyond and the visible. Emma's fingers lingered on the diary's last entries, which hinted at hidden spaces within the house, places where Margaret kept her most treasured memories safe from prying eyes. Driven by a mixture of curiosity and resolve, Emma resumed her search with renewed vigor. She examined the walls and floorboards with care, noticing subtle irregularities, a faint draft behind a panel, the slight give of a bookshelf pressed too firmly against the wall. Hours of meticulous exploration led her to a narrow crevice behind the living room's tall bookcase. With effort, she eased the shelf aside, revealing a concealed door, its surface aged and worn, but unmistakably a barrier to a hidden room. Emma's pulse quickened as she reached for the handle, the air thick with anticipation. The door creaked open to reveal a small, sunlit chamber, untouched by time. Inside, the room was a trove of keepsakes, handwritten letters tied with faded ribbons, delicate lace handkerchiefs, and a faded quilt stitched with care. A wooden cradle sat in one corner, its paint chipped but lovingly preserved. Light spilled through a small window, casting a warm glow on the treasures within, as if the room itself was a sanctuary of memory. Emma stepped inside, feeling the weight of history settle around her like a gentle embrace. The hidden room was a testament to Margaret's desire to protect the fragments of her life, a sacred space where love and loss coexisted in quiet harmony. It was a refuge from the world's harsh judgments, a place where motherhood's joys and sorrows were preserved and honored. As Emma ran her fingers over the quilt's intricate stitches, her thoughts drifted to the child she carried, the life growing within her. The parallels between her journey and Margaret's were undeniable. Two women separated by time, but united in resilience. The hidden room became a symbol of sanctuary, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there could be a refuge of hope. The emotional weight of the discovery stirred something deep within Emma. She allowed herself to feel the vulnerability she had kept at bay, the fear of abandonment, the anxiety of the unknown, the longing for a safe space. Yet, amid these feelings, there was also strength, a resolve to create a home filled with love and protection. The cottage, with all its secrets and scars, was no longer just a place to hide. It was becoming a place to heal, to nurture new beginnings. Emma understood that motherhood was not just about bringing a child into the world, but about forging a sanctuary where both could grow and thrive. Outside, the village continued its quiet rhythm, unaware of the revelations unfolding within the old cottage's walls. But for Emma, the house was alive with possibility, its stories weaving into her own, offering a path through uncertainty toward belonging. As twilight settled, Emma closed the hidden door gently, the soft click echoing through the empty room. She stood for a moment, breathing in the weight of the past and the promise of the future. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but now she carried with her the strength of those who had come before, a legacy of resilience etched into the very fabric of the cottage. With a final glance around the parlor, Emma felt a quiet determination settle in her heart. The cottage's mysteries were far from fully revealed, but she was ready to face them, to uncover the hidden stories that would guide her through the days to come. In this forgotten home, amid dust and shadows, Emma was beginning to find her own place. A sanctuary not just of stone and wood, but of hope and courage. The morning light filtered softly through the cottage's dusty windows, casting a warm glow on the scattered remnants of a lifelong past. Emma sat at the worn wooden table, the leather-bound diary open before her, its fragile pages whispering tales that bridged decades. Each word she read drew her deeper into Margaret's world, a world shaped by resilience, sacrifice, and the fierce love of a mother determined to protect her child against all odds. The diary's entries were raw and unfiltered, chronicling the challenges Margaret faced as a single mother during wartime. Emma traced the delicate handwriting, imagining the tremble of the pen as Margaret poured her heart onto the page. The words spoke of long nights spent comforting a crying infant, of whispered prayers for safety and peace, and the constant weight of societal judgment that bore down like an unseen shroud. One passage stood out, its poignancy striking a chord deep within Emma's own fears and hopes. They say a woman alone cannot raise a child in these times, that the world will break us both before we find our footing. But I will not let fear dictate our fate. For my baby, I will build a fortress from love and hope, no matter how fragile it may seem. Emma's fingers lingered on the page, her breath catching as she felt the echo of those words resonate within her. The diary was more than a record. It was a testament to the enduring spirit that had carried Margaret through hardship, a spirit that now seemed to flow through Emma's own veins. As she continued reading, Emma discovered a photograph tucked between the pages, its edges worn and curled. The image captured Margaret cradling her infant, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of a hearth. The woman's eyes were fierce yet tender, a silent declaration of the lengths she would go to protect her child. Emma's gaze softened, a profound connection bridging the years. The photograph stirred a swirl of emotions, admiration, sorrow, and a deep sense of kinship. Emma saw in Margaret's story a reflection of her own fears, the uncertainty of motherhood, the dread of loneliness, and the fierce desire to create a safe haven for her unborn child. But alongside those fears was a growing resolve. a determination to rise above the shadows of the past and forge a new path. The diary also revealed Margaret's hopes for the future, her words imbued with a quiet optimism that defied the harshness of her reality. She wrote of dreams where her child would grow free from stigma and hardship, where love would be the foundation of their lives. These entries were fragile, yet powerful, a beacon in the darkness that illuminated the possibility of healing and renewal. Emma felt a tear slip down her cheek, a mingling of grief and hope. The weight of Margaret's legacy settled upon her shoulders, not as a burden, but as a mantle of strength. This cottage, with its hidden stories and silent walls, was more than a shelter. It was a repository of resilience, a place where the past and present intertwined. Lost in the diary's pages, Emma was startled by the sudden rumble of thunder outside. The sky darkened rapidly, heavy clouds rolling in with a fierce urgency. She closed the diary gently and rose, moving toward the window to watch the storm gather over the village. Raindrops began to patter against the glass, their steady rhythm a soothing counterpoint to the turmoil within her heart. The storm's arrival mirrored the tempest of emotions swirling inside Emma. Fear, loneliness, uncertainty, but also a burgeoning strength. She felt the fragile threads of her resolve tested by the rising wind. Yet beneath it all, a steady flame of hope persisted. As the rain intensified, Emma's thoughts returned to Margaret's secret, the hidden room she had discovered, a sanctuary where precious memories were kept safe from the world's harsh gaze. That room was a testament to the power of sanctuary, a place where love could endure despite adversity. Emma realized that motherhood was not just about survival. It was about creating spaces where vulnerability could be met with compassion and protection. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the life growing within her, a tangible reminder of the future she was determined to nurture. The cottage, with its cracks and shadows, was becoming a symbol of that determination, a place where past sorrows could be transformed into hope. The storm's fury echoed through the night, but inside the cottage, a quiet warmth prevailed. Emma lit a candle, its flickering flame casting dancing shadows on the walls. She returned to the diary, reading Margaret's final entries, which spoke of a love that transcended time and hardship. May those who come after find strength in these words. One passage read, "May they know that even in the darkest hours, love is the light that guides us home." Emma closed the diary, her heart full. The legacy she had uncovered was not merely a story of hardship, but a testament to the enduring power of love and resilience. It was a legacy she was now part of, a thread woven into the tapestry of the cottage's history. As dawn broke and the storm subsided, Emma sat quietly, the weight of the past balanced by the promise of the future. The cottage had become more than a refuge. It was a bridge between generations, a place where the stories of mothers past could inspire the courage of mothers yet to come. In that fragile morning light, Emma made a silent vow to honor Margaret's hope, to face her own fears, and to build a sanctuary of love for the child she would soon bring into the world. The journey ahead was uncertain, but within the walls of the old cottage, strength and hope had taken root, promising new beginnings amid the echoes of history. The storm had settled into a steady rhythm by the time Emma found herself drawn back toward the hidden room. The soft patter of rain against the cottage windows, a soothing backdrop to her thoughts. The flickering candlelight cast shadows on the walls, dancing like memories just out of reach. She hesitated at the doorway, the weight of the past mingling with the fragile hope she had begun to nurture. Pushing the door open, Emma stepped inside the small sanctuary Margaret had created. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and worn fabric, a quiet testament to the years of care poured into this secret space. As she ran her fingers over the delicate keepsakes, handwritten letters tied with faded ribbons, a quilt stitched with painstaking love, she felt the room's stillness wrap around her like a protective embrace. The storm outside intensified, thunder rumbling low and deep, shaking the cottage's ancient timbers. Emma's heart mirrored the tempest, swirling with fears and hopes alike. She pressed a hand to her belly, feeling the gentle flutter of life within, a reminder of the fragile sanctuary she must build for her child. Margaret's diary had hinted at this room's existence, a refuge where she kept her most precious memories safe from prying eyes and harsh judgments. Now, standing in its quiet glow, Emma understood why. Here, love endured despite loneliness. Here, a mother's strength was etched into every stitch, every word, every carefully preserved fragment. A sudden gust rattled the window panes, and Emma's gaze fell upon a small wooden box resting on a shelf. Its surface was carved with the same intricate patterns she had seen on the cottage door. With trembling hands, she lifted the lid, revealing a collection of faded photographs and pressed flowers. Among them lay a folded letter, its edges worn and delicate. Unfolding the note, Emma read Margaret's handwriting once more. The letter was addressed to her unborn child, a message of hope and protection, a mother's promise across time. "My dear one," it began, "if you find this letter, know that you were loved fiercely from the moment I first held you. Though the world may not have been kind, I vowed to create a haven for you, a place where your heart could find peace and your spirit strength. This cottage, this hidden room, is my gift to you, a sanctuary where love will always shelter you." Tears blurred Emma's vision as she clutched the letter to her chest. Margaret's words spoke directly to her fears, the dread of abandonment, the overwhelming uncertainty of motherhood, but also to her deepest desires, to build a safe, loving space amid the chaos. The emotional weight of the moment pressed heavily upon Emma. She realized that this hidden room was more than a refuge for Margaret's memories. It was a symbol of sanctuary itself, a testament to the power of creating safety in a world that often felt cold and unforgiving. Her thoughts drifted to the child she carried, imagining the life yet to come. The fears that had once threatened to consume her, the loneliness, the doubts, the shadows of the past, now seemed tempered by a growing resolve. Emma understood that motherhood was not just about protection from the outside world, but about cultivating an inner sanctuary, where both mother and child could find solace and strength. As the storm raged outside, Emma sat down on the worn wooden floor, the letter still clutched in her hand. She allowed herself to feel the vulnerability she had long suppressed, the fear of being alone, the anxiety of the unknown future, but also the courage that came from embracing those feelings rather than fleeing from them. She thought of Margaret's silent struggle, the quiet battles fought behind closed doors, and the fierce love that had sustained her. Emma felt that same fire ignite within herself, a determination to face whatever lay ahead with grace and resilience. The storm's fury softened into a gentle rain, the thunder fading into distant echoes. Emma rose, placing the letter carefully back into the wooden box. A sacred trust passed from one mother to another across the years. She lingered a moment longer in the room, breathing in the stillness, the weight of history, and the promise of new beginnings. Outside, the cottage stood steadfast against the fading storm, its walls holding stories of love, loss, and endurance. Inside, Emma felt a profound connection, not just to Margaret, but to all the women who had forged paths through uncertainty, who had built sanctuaries of strength in the face of adversity. She moved back into the parlor, the familiar creaks of the floorboards grounding her in the present. The cottage was no longer just a shelter from the storm. It was becoming a home, a place where fears could be confronted and transformed, where love could flourish despite hardship. Emma's gaze fell again on the carvings etched into the doorframe, their delicate patterns now seeming less like mysterious symbols and more like a protective embrace. In their curves and twists, she saw the story of the cottage itself, a story of sanctuary, resilience, and hope. As night deepened, Emma lit a small fire in the hearth, its warmth a balm against the chill that lingered from the storm. She settled into the armchair, her thoughts turning inward. The journey ahead was daunting, filled with unknowns and challenges, but she was no longer overwhelmed by fear. Instead, she carried with her the legacy of those who had come before, the strength of Margaret's love, the village's whispered stories, and the quiet sanctuary of this hidden room. These were her anchors, her guides. Emma placed a hand on her belly, feeling the steady beat of new life within. The fears of abandonment and isolation still whispered at the edges of her mind, but they were softened by a newfound courage, a promise to herself and her child that they would face the future together, sheltered by love and fortified by hope. As the flickering firelight danced across the walls, Emma allowed herself a rare moment of peace. The cottage, with all its shadows and secrets, had become a place of refuge, a sanctuary where motherhood could take root, and where the fragile threads of hope could weave into a tapestry of strength. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight, Emma was home. The sun hung low in the sky as Emma stepped out onto the creaking porch, the soft hues of late afternoon casting long shadows across the overgrown garden. The air was crisp, carrying with it the distant murmur of village life, the laughter of children playing beyond the lane, the faint clatter of shutters closing for the evening. For a moment, the cottage felt like a sanctuary untouched by the pressures of the outside world. But that fragile peace was shattered the moment a sleek, black car rumbled down the lane, its polished surface gleaming unnaturally against the village's weathered stone cottages. The vehicle came to a halt near the edge of Emma's property, and a man stepped out, his tailored suit and confident stride marking him as an outsider in this quiet place. He introduced himself as Mr. Collins, a property developer with an eye on the village's hidden gems. His smile was practiced, his tone smooth as he spoke of modernization, investment, and opportunity. He explained that the cottage was part of a larger parcel he hoped to acquire, with plans to transform the land into a series of upscale homes. Emma listened carefully, the words stirring a knot of unease deep within her. Mr. Collins' vision was one of progress, but to Emma, it felt like a threat, an erasure of history, a dismissal of all the stories and memories embedded in the cottage's faded walls. When he pressed her to consider selling, citing the financial security it could provide for her and her unborn child, Emma hesitated. The offer was tempting, especially given the uncertainty that lay ahead. But the thought of giving up the cottage, the refuge that had become her anchor, filled her with dread. Later that evening, the weight of the decision pressed heavily upon her. She sat by the fire, the flickering flames casting shifting shadows on the walls, and her thoughts wandered to the village and its people. Mrs. Langley's words echoed in her mind, a reminder of the deep roots entwined with the cottage. The next morning, Emma sought out Mrs. Langley, finding the elderly woman tending to her garden under a gray sky. The wrinkles on Mrs. Langley's face seemed to deepen with concern as Emma shared the encounter with Mr. Collins and his intentions. "The village has always been a place of stories," Mrs. Langley said softly, her eyes distant yet resolute. "This cottage holds more than bricks and mortar. It carries the hopes and struggles of those who came before us. Selling it would mean losing a part of that legacy." Emma nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle upon her shoulders. Mrs. Langley's caution was not just about preserving a building, but about safeguarding a heritage that belonged to the community. Word of Mr. Collins's interest spread quietly but swiftly through the village. Emma found herself fielding curious glances and whispered conversations as she walked the narrow streets. The villagers, many of whom had known Margaret's story through Mrs. Langley's tales, expressed a quiet but firm attachment to the cottage. In a small gathering at the village hall, Emma met Tom, a local historian with a passion for preserving the area's heritage. His eyes lit up as he spoke of the cottage's significance, not just as a relic of the past, but as a living testament to resilience and community. Together, they began to research the property's history, uncovering records and photographs that painted a richer picture of Margaret's life and the cottage's role during difficult times. Tom's enthusiasm was infectious, and Emma felt a growing sense of solidarity, a reminder that she was not alone in her desire to protect this place. Yet, the pressure from Mr. Collins persisted. He intensified his efforts, sending letters and legal notices, his tone shifting from persuasive to insistent. Emma found herself caught between the need for financial security and the desire to honor the cottage's legacy. One afternoon, as she sorted through papers in the dim light of the parlor, a formal notice arrived, a warning that eviction proceedings could begin if she did not comply with the sale. The threat was stark, a jarring contrast to the warmth she had begun to feel within the cottage's walls. Emma's heart pounded with fear and frustration. The thought of losing the sanctuary she had fought so hard to claim was almost unbearable. Yet, beneath the anxiety, a flicker of determination grew stronger. With Mrs. Langley's encouragement and Tom's support, Emma resolved to stand firm. They rallied the community, sharing Margaret's story and the cottage's history with neighbors and local officials. Petitions were signed, letters sent, voices raised in defense of the place that had become a symbol of hope. Emma's internal conflict mirrored the external battle. The fear of financial instability clashed with the deep-rooted need to preserve the heritage and sanctuary she had found. Yet, each step toward resistance strengthened her sense of purpose. As autumn leaves swirled outside, Emma spent evenings by the fire, drafting responses and gathering evidence to challenge the developer's claims. The cottage, once a place of isolation, had transformed into a rallying point, a beacon for those who valued history, community, and resilience. Through sleepless nights and uncertain days, Emma found solace in the connections forged with neighbors and newfound friends. The village's quiet strength bolstered her courage, reminding her that she was part of something larger than herself. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma stood on the porch, the cool air carrying the scent of earth and wood smoke. The carvings on the door seemed to glow softly in the fading light, their intricate patterns a silent testament to endurance. She clutched a letter from Mrs. Langley, its words a balm to her weary spirit. "Hold fast to what is good, Emma. This cottage is more than a house. It is a home, a history, and a hope for the future. Fight for it, not just for yourself, but for all who have found strength within its walls." Emma's resolve crystallized in that moment. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but she was no longer the frightened woman who had arrived weeks before. The cottage was hers to protect, a sanctuary not just for herself and her child, but for the legacy she had vowed to preserve. As twilight deepened, the village lights flickered on, casting a warm glow over stone walls and winding lanes. Emma felt the weight of the past and the promise of the future entwined around her heart, a delicate balance of vulnerability and strength. Tomorrow would bring its own battles, but tonight, she stood ready to face them, fortified by community, history, and an unyielding hope that the cottage, and all it represented, would endure. The morning mist clung low over the village as Emma stepped out of the cottage, her breath visible in the crisp air. The sun was just beginning to cast pale gold across the cobblestones, illuminating the familiar faces of neighbors going about their daily routines. The weight of recent weeks still pressed on her, but today there was a new sense of purpose in her stride, a determination born from the small but growing circle of support she had begun to build. Word of the threatened sale had rippled quietly but steadily through the village, awakening a collective memory bound to the old cottage. Emma found herself reaching out, walking door to door, sharing Margaret's story and the history she'd uncovered. Many listened with quiet reverence, their eyes reflecting a deep-seated connection to the land and its stories. It was during one such visit that Emma met Tom more fully, a local historian whose passion for the village's past was matched only by his quiet kindness. Tom welcomed Emma into his modest home, walls lined with books, photographs, and maps detailing the village's evolution through time. Over cups of strong tea, he recounted tales of Margaret's life and the cottage's role during wartime, stories that seemed to breathe life back into the faded walls Emma cared for. Together, they pored over old documents in the village archives, uncovering letters and photographs that painted a richer picture of Margaret's resilience and the cottage's significance to the community. Each discovery was a thread weaving Emma closer into the fabric of village life, a reminder that she was no longer alone in her fight. Tom's steady presence became a quiet anchor for Emma, his knowledge and unwavering support a balm to her frayed nerves. As they worked side by side to gather evidence against the developer's plans, a friendship blossomed, rooted in shared purpose and mutual respect. The village, once a backdrop to Emma's isolation, was now a chorus of voices rising in defense of the cottage. Neighbors rallied, attending meetings and signing petitions, their solidarity a shield against the encroaching threat. The stories of past hardships and triumphs, once whispered in hushed tones, now echoed loudly in the halls of local government. Emma found herself standing before crowds, recounting Margaret's story and the cottage's legacy, her voice steady despite the flutter of nerves beneath. Each time she spoke, her confidence grew, fueled by the knowledge that she was part of something greater, a community bound by history and hope. Amid the mounting tension, moments of warmth and connection offered reprieve. Emma shared meals with Mrs. Langley, who offered wisdom born of years and a steady presence that felt like a balm to Emma's restless heart. Tom's quiet companionship provided laughter and reassurance on days when fear threatened to overwhelm. Yet the stakes continued to rise. The developer's legal pressure intensified, and Emma faced mounting uncertainty about her future. But with each challenge, her resolve deepened. She was no longer a solitary figure, but a guardian of legacy, buoyed by allies who believed in the power of preservation. One afternoon, as autumn leaves swirled outside, Emma and Tom stood together in the village hall, presenting their findings to a gathering of local officials and residents. The room buzzed with anticipation and shared purpose. an assembly united by the desire to protect not just a building, but a symbol of endurance and community. Tom spoke eloquently of the cottage's historical significance, weaving facts with stories of Margaret's courage and the village's role in sheltering families during dark times. Emma followed, her testimony heartfelt and unwavering, painting a vivid picture of a sanctuary that had become a beacon of hope for her and many others. The response was heartfelt, officials nodding as they absorbed the weight of the evidence and the community's passion. As the meeting adjourned, Emma felt a surge of hope, a sense that their voices had been heard, that the cottage's story had found champions beyond its walls. Back at the cottage, Emma allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The carvings on the door, once mysterious and distant, now felt like welcoming arms, symbols of resilience etched into wood. She traced the patterns gently, feeling the connection between past and present deepen. Her thoughts turned inward to the life growing within her, a fragile yet fierce reminder of the future she was fighting to protect. The fear that had once gripped her loosened its hold, replaced by a determination forged through community and shared history. Late that evening, as the village settled under a blanket of stars, Emma sat by the window, the soft glow of lamplight illuminating her face. The cottage, alive with memories and hope, cradled her and the new life she carried. Outside, the village breathed with quiet strength, its people bound together in a common cause. Emma knew the battle was far from over. The developer's shadow still loomed. But she faced the days ahead fortified by friendship, history, and an unshakable belief in the power of belonging. In this small corner of the world, amid the whispers of past and present, Emma had found more than a refuge. She had found a family, a purpose, and a future worth fighting for. The crisp autumn air carried an uneasy tension through the village as Emma sat by the window, the fading daylight casting long shadows across the worn floorboards of the cottage. Outside, the trees swayed in a restless breeze, their golden leaves spiraling down like whispers of warning. Inside, the cozy warmth from the hearth did little to soothe the growing unease gnawing at Emma's heart. For weeks, the battle to protect the cottage had waged quietly but fiercely, a tug of war between preservation and progress. Now, Mr. Collins had escalated his efforts, his polite overtures replaced by cold legal threats and veiled intimidation. Letters arrived with increasing frequency, demanding compliance, warning of eviction, and hinting at consequences for resistance. Emma's hands trembled as she unfolded the latest notice, its formal language masking the menace beneath. The words felt like a dagger aimed not just at the cottage, but at the fragile sanctuary she was striving to build for herself and her unborn child. That night, sleep was elusive. The cottage's creaks and groans seemed louder in the darkness, shadows stretching into shapes that whispered doubts and fears. Emma pressed her hand to her belly, seeking comfort in the quiet life growing within, a fragile beacon amid the storm. A sudden noise shattered the silence, a sharp crash from the back of the house. Heart pounding, Emma rose cautiously, the dim glow of a lantern barely piercing the darkness. She moved toward the sound, each step weighed down by a mix of fear and determination. In the kitchen, a broken window gaped like an open wound, shards of glass scattered across the floor. A chilling sense of violation settled over Emma, the intruder's presence a stark reminder of the battle's stakes. She searched the room, finding signs of a hurried ransack, drawers left open, papers strewn about, the fragile order she had fought to create shattered in moments. Fear threatened to consume her, but a steady voice inside whispered resilience. She was not alone. Tom's presence, the village's support, and the legacy of those who had come before her formed a shield stronger than any fear. Tom arrived minutes later, his face grim as he surveyed the damage. "This is intimidation," he said quietly. "They want to scare you into giving up." Emma nodded, the weight of the threat settling heavily. Yet beneath the dread, a spark of defiance ignited. This violation had only strengthened her resolve. Together, they began to document the damage, photographing the broken glass and disarray. Tom offered to stay overnight, a steady presence against the darkness that had encroached upon the cottage's walls. As dawn broke, Emma found a letter tucked beneath the door, a final message from Mr. Collins. Its words were blunt and chilling. "Sell now, or face the consequences." The threat was clear, the stakes higher than ever. But Emma's spirit refused to yield. Drawing strength from Margaret's story and the community's unwavering support, she resolved to stand firm. The cottage was more than a building. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of love and history intertwined. Days turned into nights filled with planning and preparation. Emma, Mrs. Langley, and Tom rallied neighbors, organizing watch shifts and legal consultations. The village united in quiet defiance, a collective heartbeat against the tide of erasure. Through the turmoil, Emma found moments of solace in simple acts: a shared meal, a whispered conversation, the warmth of a hand held in solidarity. Each connection fortified her, transforming fear into courage. Late one evening, as rain beat softly against the windows, Emma discovered a final letter from Margaret tucked within the hidden room. Its words were a balm to her weary soul. "To those who carry on this fight, know that you are not alone. Within these walls lies the strength of generations, a promise that love and hope endure. Stand firm, for the future is forged in the courage of the present." Emma folded the letter carefully, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. The legacy she had inherited was not merely a story, but a living force, guiding her through the darkest hours. As the storm outside raged on, Emma prepared for the challenges ahead. The road was uncertain, fraught with danger and sacrifice. But within her burned an unyielding flame, a fierce love for the life she carried and the home she refused to relinquish. The cottage, scarred but steadfast, stood as a silent witness to the battle, its walls echoing with the strength of those who had come before and the hope of those yet to come. In the face of intimidation and fear, Emma found her voice, clear, unwavering, and ready to fight for the sanctuary she and her unborn child deserved. The wind howled outside the cottage, rattling the old window panes as dark clouds churned across the sky. Inside, the air was thick with tension and anticipation. Emma's contractions had started hours ago. Subtle at first, but growing steadily stronger, mirroring the storm raging beyond the walls. She clutched the edge of the wooden table, her knuckles white, breathing through the waves of pain that came and went like relentless tides. Mrs. Langley sat nearby, her experienced hands steady and reassuring as she prepared a warm cloth and murmured quiet encouragement. The years of hardship etched into the elderly woman's face gave Emma a strange comfort, a reminder that resilience was woven into the very fabric of this place. Tom paced by the door, his usual calm replaced by a taut anxiety. He glanced at Emma with a mixture of concern and determination, ready to do whatever was needed to help bring new life into the world. Emma's thoughts flickered between the present storm and the stories she had uncovered. The legacy of Margaret, who had faced her own battles in this very cottage, raising her child amid uncertainty and fear. That connection, That unbroken thread of motherhood and strength filled Emma with a fierce resolve. The contractions intensified, each one a reminder that the future depended on this moment. The cottage, once a place of shadows and secrets, now became a crucible of life and hope. Emma focused on her breathing, the rhythmic pulse guiding her through the pain. Mrs. Langley's hands were steady as she tended to Emma, her voice soft but firm. "You're strong, just like Margaret. This child is coming into a world that needs your courage." The storm outside grew fiercer, rain lashing against the windows and wind threatening to tear through the old timbers. Yet inside, the cottage held a fragile sanctuary, its walls echoing with the strength of generations. As the hours passed, Emma's labor progressed. The pain was relentless, but so was her determination. Tom remained by her side, offering water and words of encouragement, his presence a steady anchor amid the tempest. In between contractions, Emma's mind drifted to the hidden room where Margaret's letters and keepsakes lay, a secret sanctuary of memories and love. The thought of that room, a refuge from the world's harshness, gave her courage to face the uncertainty. The storm's fury seemed to peak as Emma's labor reached its climax. The cottage trembled under the force of the wind, but within, a new life was about to enter the world. Mrs. Langley guided Emma through the final moments, her calm presence a beacon in the chaos. With a final, powerful effort, Emma cried out as her daughter was born. A fragile, perfect life wrapped in soft blankets and the warmth of hope. Tears streamed down Emma's face as she held her newborn close, the weight of struggle and fear melting into a profound sense of love and belonging. The storm outside began to abate, the howling winds giving way to gentle rain. The cottage, once shrouded in darkness and uncertainty, now glowed with the light of new beginnings. Tom offered a smile, his eyes shining with relief and joy. Mrs. Langley's face radiated quiet pride, a testament to the enduring strength of the women who had come before. Emma looked down at her daughter, feeling the unbroken line of mothers stretching back through time, a lineage of resilience, love, and hope. The cottage was no longer just a home. It was a sanctuary where the past and future converged, where new life was nurtured amidst the echoes of history. As dawn broke, casting soft light through the windows, Emma whispered her daughter's name, Elela Nena, a name that carried the weight of legacy and the promise of tomorrow. In that quiet morning glow, surrounded by those who had stood by her, Emma felt a profound sense of belonging. The battles fought, the shadows faced, all led to this moment. A new chapter beginning within the walls of the cottage that had become a beacon of hope. Her daughter's gentle breaths mingled with the soft sounds of the waking village, a reminder that life, in all its fragility and strength, would continue to unfold, guided by love and the unyielding spirit of those who came before. The morning sun filtered gently through the lace curtains, casting a warm glow over the small, cluttered nursery, where Emma cradled Elela Nene in her arms. The soft coos of the newborn mingled with the distant sounds of village life, stirring to meet a new day. Outside, the world was waking, but within the walls of the cottage, a profound stillness lingered, a quiet peace born from struggle and hope. Emma gazed down at her daughter's delicate features, the tiny fingers curling instinctively around her own, the faint rise and fall of her chest. In this moment, the weight of the past seemed to lift, replaced by a radiant promise of new beginnings. The cottage, once a relic of forgotten years, had transformed into a living home filled with love and possibility. The battles with Mr. Collins had faded into the background, his threats dissipated by the village's united resistance and the strength Emma had found within herself and her community. The eviction notices had been withdrawn, legal challenges overcome, and the cottage's legacy secured not just by documents, but by the hearts of those who cherished it. Neighbors arrived throughout the morning, bearing gifts of food, blankets, and quiet congratulations. Mrs. Langley, her eyes moist with pride, sat beside Emma, sharing stories of the cottage's past and the women who had fought to preserve its spirit. Tom offered a steady hand and a reassuring smile, a quiet presence grounded in friendship and shared purpose. The village had rallied not just around a building, but around a vision, a sanctuary where history and hope intertwined, where new life could flourish amid the echoes of resilience. Emma felt the invisible threads of connection strengthen around her and her daughter, weaving a tapestry of belonging and support. As the day unfolded, Emma found moments to reflect on the journey that had brought her here. The loneliness, the fear, the discoveries that had unveiled a hidden lineage of strength. Margaret's story, once a distant echo, now felt intimately entwined with her own, a legacy passed from one mother to another across time. The cottage had become more than shelter. It was a testament to the power of endurance and the sanctuary motherhood could create. Emma resolved to honor that legacy, to nurture a space where her daughter could grow surrounded by love, history, and community. Plans began to take shape. Restoring the cottage not just as a home, but as a place of gathering and support. Emma envisioned a sanctuary for women facing hardship, a refuge inspired by the stories she had uncovered and the kindness she had received. The Thornfield Women's Sanctuary, a beacon of resilience and hope, would stand as a tribute to the past and a promise for the future. Evening settled softly over the village, the sky painted with hues of lavender and gold. Emma stepped onto the porch, Elelanina cradled against her chest, feeling the cool breeze brush against her skin. The carvings on the front door caught the fading light, their intricate patterns a silent witness to the unbroken line of women who had called this place home. Around her, the community smiled and waved, a circle of support that embraced them all. Emma inhaled deeply, the scent of blooming lilacs and fresh earth filling her lungs, a reminder that life, in all its complexity and beauty, was forever renewed. In that moment, Emma understood that she and her daughter were no longer adrift. They were rooted deeply in a place of belonging, a sanctuary forged through courage, love, and the unyielding spirit of generations. With a gentle smile, Emma whispered to Elelanina, "Welcome home." The cottage stood quietly behind them, its walls alive with stories, its heart open to the future. And as stars began to twinkle overhead, a new chapter unfolded, one of healing, hope, and the enduring power of home.